I transmigrated as the villainous side character in a BL novel. Because I targeted the main bottom at every turn, I was eventually thrown into the sea to sleep with the fishes by the protagonist group. To change my fate, I walked on eggshells and kissed up to them. Little did I know, the entire protagonist group had awakened their self-awareness. When I accepted a junior girl's confession, four men suddenly surrounded me. The main bottom said in an icy tone, "Look at the great idea you guys came up with. Take it slow," you said. Now his mind is entirely on a woman. Chapter 1. Waking up, I was lying in Casper's arms again. I shifted my body, and the man immediately hugged me tighter. He nuzzled the side of my neck, his lips brushing against my earlobe as if by accident. The atmosphere was ambiguous and stiflingly hot. I gave him a push, pressing my lips together helplessly. "Casper, you're sleepwalking again." This was my 30th day since transmigrating into this story, and Casper's 10th day of sleepwalking. The weird thing was, every time he sleepwalked, he only ever climbed into my bed. After waking up, he would always apologize politely, and then do it all over again the next night. I was practically getting used to it. Casper's voice was mumbled, not fully awake yet. Baby, give me a kiss." Saying that, he pinched my chin, leaning in for a kiss. I jumped in fright and grabbed his hand. After confirming the other two roommates weren't stirring, I finally let out a sigh of relief. You couldn't blame me for being so nervous, because Casper was the main bottom of the book I transmigrated into. And the other two roommates were two of the three main tops. If they found out that Casper wasn't just climbing into my bed every night but also trying to kiss me, given their insane possessiveness, I'd probably be thrown into the sea way ahead of schedule. Seeing he still wasn't awake, I poked his arm again. He let out a yawn, his large hand giving my waist a squeeze. His gaze slowly moved from my eyes down to my lips. His voice was lazy and husky. "Elliot, I was sleepwalking again. I'm so sorry." But there wasn't a single trace of apology in his expression or tone. I covered his mouth and yelled, "Keep it down! Get out of here, quick!" Being so loud, it was like he was afraid people wouldn't know we were in the same bed. Casper sat up, the corners of his eyes drooping slightly. Is Elliot disgusted by me? He looked like a wronged puppy, making you helplessly want to protect him. No wonder he could make three outstanding guys jealous and fight over him. As if bewitched, my heart softened for a second. Of course not. His eyes lit up, immediately pushing his luck. "Then I'll sleep with you from now on. Okay?" If I dared to say yes to that, the main leads would eat me alive. I pretended I didn't hear him, quickly jumping out of bed and hiding in the bathroom. By the time I finished washing up and came out, our roommate Brant had already returned from the gym. I immediately checked my bed. Casper had already gone back to his own desk. Brant was the number one top in the book, and also Casper's childhood friend. Brant casually pulled off his shirt, then tossed some breakfast onto Casper's desk. "Here." It was Casper's favorite flavor, which you had to go to a shop 3 kilometers off campus to buy. This was also one of his likable traits in the original book. Childhood sweethearts, taking care of Casper down to the finest detail, spoiling him rotten. Piling a smile onto my face, I tried to suck up to Brant by striking up a conversation. "Brant, you're amazing. Hitting the gym every day. Those abs could be used as a washboard." After saying that, I didn't expect him to actually respond to my exaggerated praise. After all, this type of boyfriend usually only had eyes for the person they liked. Ever since I transmigrated, I praised him every time I saw him, and he would only ever give a cool nod. But I had a plan. As long as I sucked up to everyone in the protagonist group, when the grand finale came and the four of them lived happily ever after, they surely wouldn't still throw me into the ocean, right? "Then do you want to touch them?" Brant suddenly spoke up. I was drinking water and choked violently, looking at Brant in sheer disbelief. What was going on? We weren't following the script today. Out of the corner of my eye, Casper also lifted his head, staring straight at me. I was suddenly a bit at a loss for what to do. I didn't hear that wrong, right? He told me to touch him? Touch. Casper let out a soft chuckle, but his face was entirely expressionless. "If you want to touch, then touch. Why are you looking at me?" Just as I was panicking, a wall of a man closed in on me. Brant lowered his eyes, grabbed my left hand, and pressed my palm flat against his abs. The man's freshly exercised skin was still damp with sweat, the heat making me shudder. The texture, those muscle lines, just touching them made my face burn and my heart race. Brant hooked the corner of his mouth into a smirk and took another step closer. "Seems like you really like it." I snapped back to reality and jerked backward, but I had no idea when Casper had gotten behind me. I crashed right into his chest. His face was dark. He wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, smiling a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Are they really that great to touch? Crap. Casper was jealous. Oh my god. I was panicking even more now. Did Casper think I was seducing Brant on purpose to ruin their relationship? I shook my head, then nodded my head. Casper's question was seriously impossible to answer. But Brant suddenly pulled me out of Casper's arms, shielding me behind him. His tone actually sounded a little smug. If they weren't great to touch, would Elliot be blushing? Casper's face went completely frigid. He stared at the left hand I used to touch Brant, his gaze bottomless. I had a different major than the protagonist group in my dorm, so I made an excuse about having class and quickly fled that awkward scene. On the way there, I kept replaying what had just happened in my head. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was. Whatever. If I could figure out the protagonist group's business, wouldn't I be the protagonist? Best not to overthink it and just focus on keeping myself alive. I was munching on a sandwich while checking which classroom I was in, when a speeding Harley suddenly flew out of the intersection and knocked me to the ground. A huge patch of skin was instantly scraped off my elbows and knees, and they started bleeding. The owner of the Harley drove another 4 or 5 meters before screeching to a halt. Hey, why the hell are you looking at your phone while walking, you stew? He had been cursing up a storm, but once he got a clear look at who was on the ground, the guy yanked off his helmet, looking panicked. Fuck, Elliot, why is it you? I fought through the pain and looked up. It turned out to be our other roommate, the number 2 top who I'd only seen twice since transmigrating, Derek. A sports major who loved street racing and extreme sports, all brawn and no brains. In the original book, because he wasn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed, he was constantly played for a fool by the other 2 tops. He was a bit goofy, but I was in no mood to appreciate his goofiness right now. My wounds were burning with pain. I was miserable and angry, but I didn't dare say a word, because in the grand finale, the person who stuffed me into a sack and threw me into the ocean to sleep with the fishes was the exact guy standing in front of me. I winced and bared my teeth from the pain, but didn't forget to suck up to the protagonist group, forcing myself to say, I'm fine. Hiss. Just a scratch. Derek furrowed his brows tight. Without a second word, he scooped me up and sprinted toward the campus clinic. Across 2 lifetimes before and after transmigrating, this was the first time I, a grown man, had ever been princess carried. We drew quite a crowd along the way. Doctor, quick, save my bro. He's dying of pain. Derek screamed as he burst into the campus clinic. I silently buried my face into his chest, feeling a little humiliated. Chapter 2. In the campus clinic, the doctor handed over some ointment and went back to his own business. I sat in the chair, just about to apply the ointment myself, when Derek snatched it away. He frowned. I'll do it. I froze for a second, waving my hands awkwardly. When he didn't budge, I stiffly gave in. All right then, thanks. Derek nodded, his brows still locked together, completely motionless. He was the most impatient and the best fighter among the male leads in the whole book. Considering I was also partly to blame for what happened today, my heart hammered in my chest. Was he annoyed that I was such a hassle? Just as I was about to insist on doing it myself, Derek finally spoke. Elliot, your legs are so pale and so skinny. I don't even know where to start. He crouched down until we were eye level. Fuck. I'm genuinely scared I'm gonna break you while putting this on. Just put the damn ointment on. Why the personal attack? Feeling both embarrassed and annoyed, I glared at him. I'll do it myself. He grabbed my hand, looking flustered. I never said you couldn't do it yourself. Can't a guy just make an observation? With that, he picked up a cotton swab, staring at my leg with intense concentration as he carefully dabbed the ointment on, bit by bit. His intense stare was actually making me a little shy. Derek might be reckless, but it seemed he wasn't a bad guy. He declared that since he hit me, he was going to cover all my meals for the next month. I was absolutely thrilled, because the original body setting in the book was a dirt-poor college student whose wallet was cleaner than his face. This also explained why the original host hated Casper and targeted him at every turn. Casper had a very similar background. His family wasn't rich either, and they both had a delicate, handsome look, but Casper had a wealthy childhood friend, Brant. Plus, Casper had become the ultimate college heartthrob. He didn't just attract the 3 main tops. Plenty of side characters were completely obsessed with him, too. The original host had been jealous to death. When I was reading the book, I wondered why none of the tops liked Elliot. But after transmigrating and seeing Casper in person, I realized he was way beyond just delicate. His features were so exquisitely perfect he hardly looked real, not to mention he was almost as tall as the main tops. Then look at me. Skinny as a twig, maxing out at 5'9". Standing next to the protagonist group, I looked like a little lackey. Right now, Derek's massive frame was casually draped over my shoulder. I was tucked under his arm like a baby chick as he dragged me to the dining hall. Derek told me to grab a table and wait for him. Unexpectedly, I ran right into Casper and Brant. Casper naturally carried his tray over and sat right next to me. Brant paused for a second before taking the seat across from me. I was both bewildered and awkward. When Derek showed up later, were they going to start fighting again? Derek trotted over happily, balancing 2 fully loaded trays. When he saw there were no seats left next to me, he froze. Brant, Casper, what are you guys doing here? Casper watched Derek place a tray down in front of me, his eyes darkening. To take a shit. Derek jumped. Fuck, you take shits in the dining hall? Casper rolled his eyes and shook his head. Stay away from Derek from now on. People like him would still be drooling even if you cured their brain damage. Derek sat down. Fuck, Casper, you're such a... Whatever. My Elliot is much better anyway. Bro, watch what you say, please. This is clearly a story about the 3 of you. Why are you dragging me into it? I spat out a mouthful of rice. Brant glanced at the grains of rice that had landed on his tray, freezing with his chopsticks in hand. You're... Elliot? Casper wore a fake smile. Since when did you 2 get so close? This entire scene made my mind go completely blank. I didn't know whether I should apologize for the rice in Brant's food first, stop Derek's verbal diarrhea, or answer Casper's loaded question. Brant paused expressionlessly for a few seconds, then just kept eating, as if he hadn't even noticed the rice laced with my spit. Derek, being the meathead he was, didn't sense anything wrong at all. Seeing me coughing violently, he grabbed his own bowl of soup and essentially force-fed it to me. Casper and Brant's faces instantly darkened at the exact same time. I was absolutely doomed. Oh, Derek, you actually dared to feed me soup right in front of your future wife. You are going to regret this so hard later. No wonder you had the least romantic development in the whole book. Under the unabashed stares of all 3 guys, eating that meal was excruciatingly awkward. I started thinking about asking Derek to just give me the month's worth of food money in cash. If we kept eating together like this, I was seriously afraid something bad was going to happen. I didn't expect something bad to actually happen, but thankfully it had nothing to do with me. A photo of Casper and Brant supposedly kissing while they were out had been snapped and posted on the campus message board. The comment section instantly blew up. Who would have thought that 2 of the most popular guys in the department were gay? Some people started shipping them, others were secretly calling it gross, and plenty of girls were heartbroken. That night, after classes, I had just finished washing up in the dorm when Derek, who rarely actually stayed on campus, suddenly burst into the room. You could hear his booming voice from 3 floors away. Where's Casper? Casper, don't tell me this is actually you and Brant. Casper sat at his computer, not even turning his head. It's us. Derek was flabbergasted. Fuck, you guys actually locked lips? I actually have gays living right next to me? Brant spoke flatly. We didn't kiss. Casper lost his footing on the stairs and I caught him. The photo is just a bad angle. I don't know if it was just my imagination, but Brant specifically shot me a glance while explaining, almost as if he was afraid I'd misunderstand. Derek's family business relied a lot on Brant's family, so at school, he was always extra deferential to Brant. Hearing Brant's explanation, Derek's gossipy energy dialed back a bit. He was just lazily getting ready to play some games when Casper let out a soft chuckle. But I do like guys. Derek's eyes went wide as saucers, and he instantly backed up until he was a solid 10 feet away from Casper. Holy shit. Casper, don't mess with me. Are you really gay? Fuck. As if a thought had just struck him, he wrapped his arms around himself defensively. Don't you dare catch feelings for me. Something felt off. In the original book, did Derek hate Casper this much at the beginning? Why didn't I remember that at all? Casper glared at Derek coldly. I'm gay, not an idiot. I don't just go around biting people at random. Derek was practically steaming from the ears. Fuck. If it weren't for Brant, I'd seriously beat your ass right now. Fucking gay. Disgusting. That was a bit much, and the irony was going to slap him in the face so hard later. After all, this was a BL novel. Derek was practically digging his own grave on the road to chasing his future wife. In order to save him from immense regret later on, I couldn't help but speak up. Being gay is just having a different sexual orientation. What's disgusting about it? It's like how some people like apples and some people like bananas. You can't just call people who like bananas perverts just because you prefer apples. Besides, I added quietly, before you meet your true love, who really knows if they prefer men or women? Brant's packing paused for a second, and Casper gave me a deeply meaningful look. Meanwhile, Derek just stood there, looking incredibly hurt. Elliot, I literally just agreed to pay for all your meals for a month, and you aren't even taking my side? With that, the young master stormed out of the room in a huff. Chapter 3. I didn't know where Derek ran off to, even though during the day he swore up and down he'd apply my medicine every day. I didn't care much anyway. I just casually put the ointment on myself and got ready for bed. Brant, however, saw it. A rare frown appeared on his usually expressionless face. Derek did that? I paused for a second, then nodded. He stared at my wound for a good while, didn't say anything, and walked out with his phone. So weird. Maybe it was because too much had happened today, plus I was injured, but the second my head hit the pillow, I felt incredibly exhausted and fell asleep in no time. In the middle of the night, it felt like a giant space heater was pressed right up against my back. It was the middle of summer, and I was sweating buckets, but I just couldn't wake up, until my usual biological clock woke me up. At 6 a.m., I found myself in Casper's arms. I was tired. I was so damn tired. Casper's sleepwalking seriously needed to be cured. I couldn't even be bothered to wake him up anymore. I quietly slipped out of bed, planning to wash up and head straight to class. Except, when my left hand grabbed the bed rail, it suddenly went weak, and I almost fell off. My heart was pounding, and I instantly flared up with anger. It was my bed, yet I was sneaking around like a thief. I was also a bit confused. How did my left hand get so sore and tired just from sleeping? Damn it, Casper must have slept on my hand. Fuming, I finished washing up, glared resentfully at the still sleeping Casper, and headed to the dining hall for breakfast. I had barely taken 2 bites when a commotion erupted at the dining hall entrance as a huge crowd surged in. The most conspicuous one was the towering Derek. Turns out the sports majors had finished their morning training and came for breakfast. Derek had been looking sluggish, but the moment he saw me, he perked up like a puppy finding its owner. He charged over, yelling my name. Elliot! Elliot! Why didn't you tell me you were coming to the dining hall? It's on me. I told you I'm covering your meals. Bro, you didn't even come back to the dorm last night. Who would have the nerve to ask you for food? I smiled awkwardly. No need, no need. He frowned. Looking down on me? With that, he swiped my bowl of porridge. I'm buying you a new one. You have to eat what I buy. Derek aggressively stormed toward the food counter, looking exactly like a bandit. He drew a lot of stares, people curiously looking back and forth between him and me. Derek's classmates saw him carrying 2 trays and started jeering. Yo, Derek, who are you getting food for? Don't tell me it's for your little girlfriend. Ha 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 ha. Derek kicked one of them. Piss off. Don't be gross. We're strictly brothers, don't interrupt my breakfast. His classmates cheekily brought their trays over and sat near us, occasionally glancing my way. With my social anxiety, I was so embarrassed I wanted to crawl under the table. But Derek was completely oblivious. Acting like we were super close, the young master saw me pushing the shredded carrots to the side of my plate, and he actually just picked them up and ate them, completely lacking the germophobia or disdain you'd expect from a rich kid. Elliot, you can't be this picky with your food. No wonder you're so skinny, he complained while chewing. I pulled a bitter face and just dealt with it, suddenly feeling like I'd rather pass on this month of free meals. After what Derek clearly considered an enjoyable meal, I turned to head to the academic building, but he grabbed me. I have class too. I'll drop you off. But I've only got a bicycle. Just my luck. My dad hauled away all my motorcycles last night, saying I needed to behave. Fuck. How am I not behaving? He was cursing up a storm, and before I could even react, he hoisted me onto the back seat of his bike. Derek really lived up to his sports major title. The guy was strong. He pedaled that tiny bicycle at lightning speed. I couldn't help but feel relieved his motorcycles were confiscated. Otherwise, at the speeds he drives, I probably would have been flung right off the back seat. After class in the evening, I ran into Brant. For once, he wasn't trailing right beside Casper. Seeming to notice my confusion, Brant explained that Casper had a competition and went for a last-minute practice. I didn't interact much with Brant, and he was a man of few words anyway. After saying hi, we both fell into silence. When we reached the intersection by the academic building, I forced an enthusiastic, fake smile. I've got a lecture to attend tonight for extra credits. I'm heading straight to the dining hall, so I won't go back to the dorm for now. Brant had already started walking toward the dorms, but hearing that, he suddenly changed direction. Let's go together. What? My fake smile froze. He looked at me calmly. We'll go to the dining hall together, and then go to the lecture together. Brant always spoke with a calm, aloof, yet unquestionable tone that made people instinctively obey. I seriously suspected Brant's family had a strict no-talking during meals rule. The entire dinner was exceptionally quiet, a stark contrast to Derek. Whenever I tried to find a topic to ease the awkwardness, he would put down his chopsticks and look at me earnestly while I spoke. That posture intimidated me from saying anything else. I could only bury my head in my food and pretend he didn't exist. It reminded me of the time I spat out my food. Brant had kept eating without batting an eye or getting mad at me. Truly impeccable manners. On the way to the lecture, I thought we'd remain silent the whole trip. Brant suddenly spoke up. "You seem to be getting pretty close to Casper lately?" I instantly understood Brant's behavior tonight. So he was here to warn me. The possessive daddy-type top, coming to warn off and drive away any potential romantic rivals lurking around his future wife. I shook my head inwardly and smiled helplessly. "Brant, oh Brant, you've got the wrong guy. I, the villainous side character, have already turned over a new leaf. You should be guarding against Derek. I just helped him grab his packages and take out a few times. We're not getting close." Feeling relieved, I wasn't as nervous anymore, and my tone became more natural. "You're the one closest to him. I completely get it." Brant looked straight ahead. "I'm not." "What?" He pressed his lips together and didn't say another word, falling back into silence. I thought about it, remembered Casper's condition, and decided I should probably tell Brant. After all, he was Casper's future partner. Doing him a solid favor might just save my life down the line. I started tactfully. "Casper doesn't seem to be feeling well lately. Maybe you should take him to the hospital for a checkup sometime." Brant immediately turned serious. "What's wrong with him?" "He seems to be under a lot of mental stress. I got up to use the bathroom one night and saw him sleepwalking." "Sleepwalking?" He frowned. "What did he do?" There was no way I dared to tell him what he actually did. I stammered. "Just walking around the room. Anyway, you'd better take him to see a doctor." Brant frowned, suddenly stopping in his tracks. "He climbed into your bed, didn't he?" My eyes snapped wide open. "No way, how did he guess that?" I shook my head frantically, denying it. Brant stared at me, looking like he was trying to see right through me. Just as I was regretting opening my big mouth, he finally looked away. "All right, I'll take him." Chapter 4. When we walked into the auditorium, it was already packed. Only 2 seats in the front row were still empty. I had just signed up for this lecture at random to snag some extra credits. But when the man in the suit walked up to the podium, he looked a little familiar. It wasn't until his name flashed on the projector screen. Francis. I remembered now. He was the number 3 top in the book, the one who makes a later appearance. On the surface, he looked polite and refined, but in reality, he was the most sinister and twisted one in the whole book. The guy had a thing for tying people up with ropes. Thinking about that, I couldn't help but feel a little scared of Francis. He was different from students like Brant and Derek. As the CEO of a major corporation, his mindset and methods were light years ahead of what any college student was capable of. Because Brant and I were sitting in the front row, Francis frequently interacted with the front during his speech. I don't know if I was just overthinking it, but his gaze kept landing on me, accompanied by a gentle smile. The moment the lecture ended, I immediately stood up to leave, only to hear the auditorium speakers blare to life. "Elliot, could you stay behind for a moment?" I froze. Up on the stage, surrounded by several school administrators, Francis was smiling right at me. Brant furrowed his brows and smoothly stepped in front of me, completely blocking Francis's line of sight. We were led to the lounge next to the stage by Francis's assistant. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Elliot." It wasn't long before Francis left the school officials behind and walked over by himself. "Thank you so much for last time. If it hadn't been for you, some very important company data would have been lost." When he mentioned that, it all clicked. That was my second day after transmigrating into this book's world. I was at the campus cafe buying coffee for Casper when I noticed someone had left their laptop bag on a seat. I immediately grabbed the bag and chased after them. Turns out, it was Francis's assistant who had forgotten it. At the time, Francis was sitting in the back seat of a car. He looked at me, smiled, and said thank you. He even tried to give me money, but I turned it down. So, I had already met the number 3 top the moment I arrived in this world. I just didn't realize it back then. Meeting him again this time, Francis was still incredibly polite. Everything he said and did made you feel completely at ease. When he found out I was a rising senior looking for an internship, he immediately had his assistant arrange a position for me. I felt instantly overwhelmed by the favor. This wasn't quite right. According to the novel's plot, he should be busy forcing himself on Casper right now. Why was he treating a minor side character like me so well? Before I could figure out what was going on, Francis suddenly reached out and gently squeezed my shoulder. He gave a slight smile. It's getting late. You should head back and get some rest early, Elliot. However, he continued, I'm not familiar with the campus, and my assistant has already headed back to the company. Could I trouble you to walk me to the school gates? My car is parked over there. No. Before I could even open my mouth, Brant coldly answered for me. You can have the auditorium security guard escort you. Francis's expression didn't change at all. From start to finish, he didn't even glance at Brant, just kept smiling as he waited for my answer. Brant was looking at me too. But, having accepted a favor from someone, you ought to help them out a bit, especially when I had just scored an internship at a top-tier company. I pressed my lips together and said, Brant, you head back to the dorm first. I'll walk Mr. Francis to the gates. Francis's smile grew even wider. Sorry for the trouble, Elliot. Brant suddenly wedged himself between Francis and me. He threw an arm over my shoulder, completely separating us. Then I'll accompany you to walk Mr. Francis out. After the lecture, Francis started texting me all the time, asking what I did in my free time and how my studies were going. He was as gentle as an older brother, which really changed my previous bad impression of him. It seemed like Brant really did take Casper to see a doctor because a few days later, Casper stopped sleepwalking. That doctor must be amazing to cure him in just a few days. It's just that ever since then, the way Casper looked at me was always burning hot, as if he was cooking up some wicked scheme. It was a little scary. Also, I noticed that Brant and Casper seemed to be fighting. The most obvious sign was that Brant was no longer glued to Casper's side, nor was he doing his laundry or buying him food anymore. Whenever Brant spoke, Casper would snap back at him. I'll never understand the drama of these young lovers. In comparison, only Derek was still his usual self, hot-tempered and a bit goofy. Casper went out of town for a competition. Brant took a leave of absence for a family matter, and Derek was MIA as usual, so for the past few days, I had the entire dorm to myself. It was absolutely fantastic. Chapter 5. That night, I was singing in the bathroom, and after showering, I realized I hadn't brought a change of clothes in. Figuring no one was in the dorm anyway, I just walked straight out. I never expected that right as I was humming a song and searching my closet for underwear. The door would be kicked open with a loud bang. Fuck. 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 Training these past 2 days has completely killed me. Derek, who had suddenly appeared in the doorway, saw me completely naked. His words abruptly stopped, and his eyes went wide as saucers. The sound of him kicking the door open had scared the crap out of me. I frantically grabbed some clothes to cover myself. My voice came out a mix of angry and panicked. Derek, why didn't you say something before coming back? Derek snapped back to reality. His neck started turning red, the flush slowly spreading to his ears, and finally even his forehead turned red. He looked like a boiled lobster. He coughed twice. Elliot, why are you running around the dorm naked? I hurriedly put my clothes on. I just finished showering and forgot to bring my clothes in. Oh, the room fell dead silent. Except Derek kept stealing glances at me every now and then, which gave me the creeps. He suddenly spoke up. Right your knees. I'll put the ointment on for you. With that, he crossed the room in 2 steps. Before I could even react, he was already crouching in front of me, gripping my ankle. His palm was incredibly hot. The moment it touched my skin, my leg involuntarily jerked back, but he held onto it tightly, refusing to let me pull away. I leaned back in my chair, trying to put some distance between us. But he leaned in closer, his voice a little hoarse. Don't hide. Where's the ointment? I'll rub it on for you. I tried again to pull my leg back. That was days ago, it's already scabbed over. I don't need medicine. Derek pressed his lips together, his gaze dropping to my collarbone. After a long pause, he said blankly, Oh, okay. From his tone, he almost sounded disappointed. Once he let go, I quickly scrambled up into my bed and hid behind the curtain, unconsciously letting out a sigh of relief. Derek had started acting a bit weird, too. The guy who basically never lived in the dorms was now staying here every single day. The guy who used to selectively skip core classes and definitely skip electives was actually going to general ed classes with me. Until one day after class, he actually ate a quiet, peaceful meal with me in the dining hall. Back in the dorm, I was leaning back in my chair getting ready to play a round of games before my afternoon nap. He walked up to me, his massive frame blocking the light. I looked up in confusion. What's wrong? He looked like he was mentally preparing himself for something. He took a deep breath, and his hand slowly came to rest on the back of my neck. Elliot, I need to confirm something. Can you help me out? I blinked. Help how? He whispered. Don't move. The next second, he lowered his head and kissed me on the lips. My breath was instantly stolen away. I was dumbfounded. my whole body going stiff for a few seconds. What the hell kind of crazy pill did he take? I struggled, trying to shove him away, but he pressed one hand against the back of my head, and with the other, he pinned both my wrists behind my back, pressing me down onto the desk. The kiss went from a gentle, probing test at the beginning to a sudden, frenzied biting. Couldn't breathe. I let out muffled whines, my eyes tearing up. Fuck, am I going to be the first person in history to suffocate from a kiss? The dorm door was suddenly pushed open. Brant and Casper appeared like absolute saviors. Except, when these two saviors got a clear look at what Derek and I were doing, their faces both turned incredibly ugly at the exact same time. Derek was forced to stop. He licked his lips, looking like he still wasn't satisfied. He shot Casper and Brant an impatient glare. "TCH, you guys really know how to pick a time." Casper tossed his backpack aside, his face dark as he yanked Derek away from me. "Derek, don't tell me you're gay." Derek touched his lips and suddenly laughed. "Yup, I just confirmed it. I'm gay too, so I've decided. I'm going to woo Elliot." It was like a bolt of lightning out of a clear blue sky. I stared at Derek in sheer shock. "Wait, woohoo?" While I was still reeling in shock, Casper suddenly let out an entirely emotionless laugh. "Then let's have a fair competition." What the hell? Compete for what? Compete for me? I was gonna lose my mind. What was wrong with this world? Wasn't I the vicious side character? Why did it feel like I had turned into the main character? Has this world completely collapsed? I was just an ordinary male college student who happened to stay up late reading a novel, and ended up transmigrating into the book. And what's even more absurd now is that the main bottom and the main top aren't even together. Because they've both fallen in love with me. Good Lord, how did it come to this? Our dorm was now unusually harmonious. For example, going to and from class together, going to the dining hall together, even accompanying me to my major specific classes together. I had become the weirdest existence on campus. "Elliot, I bought a new game console. Wanna come over to my place and play tonight?" Piss off, Elliot doesn't like playing games. We're going out to play board games tonight. I didn't want to go to either. I just felt a headache coming on. Brant coldly cut them off. "Elliot, that problem you asked me about this morning. I'll explain it to you at the library tonight." Had I asked him about a problem? I couldn't remember. I'd been too busy lately. But if it meant I could escape Derek and Casper, I immediately nodded in agreement. As a result, all four of us showed up at the library that night. "Somebody save me. Can anyone take my place for a few days? I'm just an ordinary college student. I'm so scared." I racked my brain but couldn't figure out why things had turned out this way. Was it just because I didn't follow the villainous character's script and actively seek death? But is it a crime to want to live? I was lost in bitter thought, my expression twisted in agony, when I heard Brant say, "Is listening to me explain this problem really that painful?" I snapped back to reality and coughed awkwardly. "No, I just really need to go. I'm hitting the restroom." I headed to the restroom, wanting to use the chance to cool my head. Brant followed me in, staring straight at me. "You're annoyed by Casper and Derek pestering you too, right? I have a way to help you get rid of them." I had a bad feeling about this. "What way?" His voice was deep but unwavering. "Be with me. Be with me." I almost passed out. Good Lord, what kind of rotten idea was that? I had to reject him outright, even though they were all incredibly handsome, completely my type, and looked like they'd be great cooks. I was terrified of dying. I finally understood now. This had to be an alternate method of death this world had arranged for me. I wasn't going to fall for it. I decided to hide from them. Chapter 6. Elliot. My assistant booked a table downstairs for lunch. "Let's eat together." Francis looked up from the financial reports, smiling at me. I froze for a second, feeling a bit stiff and awkward. "Thank you, Mr. Francis, but I'll pass. I already ordered takeout." I actually hadn't ordered anything yet, but what corporate drone actually wants to eat lunch with their boss? Especially when I was just an intern. That's right. It wasn't even summer break yet, but I had come to Francis's company early for my internship and was living in the company dorms. Because going back to campus now was like a sheep walking into a wolf's den. I never expected Brant to actually team up with the other two. Facing their burning gazes and clingy behavior every single day made my skin crawl. This world had gone completely mad, and I needed to keep a clear head. So, I chose the only one who seemed normal so far, Francis. Maybe because Francis had little contact with the other three main leads, he had always been friendly to a side character like me and hadn't broken character yet. Hearing my rejection, Francis didn't show a hint of displeasure. He kept his smile, his tone simply dropping to a soft murmur. "Is that so? What a pity." I gave an awkward smile, backed out of the office, and sat at the closest workstation outside his door to order my takeout. I was a management major in college, a pretty useless degree, so for my internship, I was basically just doing grunt work in the general manager's office. When noon rolled around, I went down to the first floor to grab my food, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I called the delivery guy, but he swore he had already dropped it off. After searching high and low with no luck, I was fuming. Seriously? Even in a high-end corporate office like this, people still steal takeout. Just as I was getting angry, a gentle voice sounded by my ear. Elliot, why haven't you gone to eat yet? I turned my head. It was Francis. I looked down. My takeout went missing. How could it go missing? I'll have someone go to the security room and check the cameras. Ah, no need, no need. I quickly stopped Francis's assistant. It was just a lowly intern's lunch. How could I dare trouble the CEO's assistant? Thank you for the thought, Mr. Francis. I'll just go grab something from the convenience store. Francis chuckled. I haven't canceled my restaurant reservation yet. Since your food is gone, just come with me. Or is it that you young people just don't want to eat with an old uncle like me? His words instantly choked back the rejection I was about to say. I hesitated for a second, then followed him. Even though Francis was a total creep toward Casper in the book, working with him now, he actually seemed like a decent guy. Even though I was just an intern, he treated me really well and was incredibly patient. He even brought me along to important press conferences and cocktail parties, showing that he valued me. In order to prove my worth, whenever his assistant stepped up to intercept drinks for Francis, I would actively jump in to help too. As a result, most of the alcohol ended up in my stomach. By the time the party ended, I was already dizzy, saying goodbye to the several blurry clones of Francis standing in front of me. Francis smiled and said okay, but then he scooped me up and put me in the backseat of his car. The driver tactfully raised the privacy partition and drove toward Francis's apartment near the company. Mr. Francis, this isn't the dorms. I looked blearily at the completely unfamiliar interior decor, wanting to leave. He placed me into the bathtub, his tone gentle. Elliot, you can only go back to the dorms after you take a bath. A bath? I need to take a bath. I raised my arms weakly, slowly lifting my shirt. Francis hooked the corner of his mouth into a smirk. His voice a low, coaxing whisper. I need a bath too. Help me, Elliot. Help? How? My eyes were glazed over with confusion. Undo the buttons right here. I nodded slowly, reaching my hands toward him. Francis's gaze grew darker and deeper as his hand ruffled my hair. What a good boy. Chapter 7. I was just an ordinary male college student who transmigrated after staying up late reading a novel. But that wasn't the scariest part. The scariest part was waking up to find myself in my boss's bed. Ah! How did this happen? I panicked and ran out of the bedroom, but suddenly stopped in my tracks. At the dining table, Francis was dressed in casual clothes, leaning back in his chair, sipping coffee while scrolling on his tablet. Seeing me, a gentle smile graced his lips. You're awake? Come have breakfast. I was wearing his oversized pajamas. The fabric gave off a faint woody scent that enveloped me, making it feel like I was being held by him. My whole body instantly felt uncomfortable. Mr. Francis, last night It's fine. He pushed up his glasses. Young people are impulsive, it's perfectly normal. My memory was a complete blank, and my heart was doing somersaults. Mr. Francis, it's the weekend, so I won't bother your rest any longer. I'll head back to the dorm now. Wait. Francis stood up and slowly walked over, his tone carrying a hint of helplessness. Did Elliot forget what you said to me last night? What did I say? He stopped right in front of me, looked down, and the corners of his mouth turned up. You confessed to me. You said you liked me and wanted me to be your boyfriend. You even clung to me, asking for kisses and hugs. I yelled in shock. How is that possible? He wrapped one arm around my waist and pulled out his phone with the other, opening his voice memos. Good thing I like to keep evidence. If Elliot can't remember, let's listen to it together. Your heartfelt confession. As his finger pressed play, a drunken, alluringly scratchy whisper played sentence by sentence. A blush-inducing love confession. The voice was definitely mine. My mind instantly went completely blank. Huh? How could this happen? While I was still reeling, Francis pulled me into his arms. I've already accepted your confession, so you're mine now. Don't even think about leaving. Just like that, I ended up in a hazy, confusing relationship with Francis. No matter how many times I explained, whether indirectly or bluntly, that my drunken rambling that night shouldn't be taken seriously, Francis simply wouldn't listen. until one day I woke up and found my ankle locked to the headboard with a thin chain. Francis gently stroked the back of my neck and pressed a kiss to the corner of my mouth. I told you not to think about leaving me, but you just wouldn't listen. Baby, it's enough for you to only have me in your heart. Crazy. They were all completely crazy. Why was the imprisonment plot meant for Casper happening to me? I cried. I threw tantrums. I refused to eat, and later I pretended to yield. But Francis always had a way to make me submit. After being locked up for a month, through all kinds of obedience and sweet-talking, he finally allowed me to go outside. It was terrifying. The moment I got my freedom, I immediately ran straight to campus. I wanted to grab my ID and pack a few things to get away for a while. I hoped that by getting far away from the protagonist group, this novel world might return to normal. As soon as I entered the campus, I bumped into a junior girl moving event supplies. She called out to me, blushing, "Senior, could you help me carry this? Everyone else in the club is busy." Seeing it wasn't far and she looked so fragile, I agreed. It shouldn't take too much time. After dropping the supplies off at the activity room, I was just about to leave when she stopped me again, thanking me profusely. I waved it off, saying it was nothing. Suddenly, her face turned bright red and she asked quietly, "Senior, do you have a girlfriend?" I froze for a second, thinking of Francis, that boyfriend who had been forcefully imposed on me. So I shook my head. "No girlfriend." Her face grew even redder, and her voice trembled with nerves. "Senior, I've actually liked you for a long time. I wasn't going to say anything now, but I'm afraid I won't see you once you leave for your senior internship. So, can I be your girlfriend?" She kept her head down, too scared to look at me, and my own face heated up as she spoke. She was a sweet, gentle girl, but in my current situation, I couldn't drag her down with me. I was just figuring out how to let her down gently when the door to the activity room next door suddenly swung open. Chapter 8. Casper's gaze darted back and forth between me and the girl, and he let out a cold scoff. Derek just grabbed my arm and started dragging me away. Brant said to the girl expressionlessly, "Sorry, we have some urgent business with Elliot. You don't need to wait for his answer." She stood there stunned, watching helplessly as the three of them took me away. Back in the dorm, they backed me into a corner. Casper stood with his arms crossed, his tone freezing. "Look at the brilliant idea you two came up with. Let him have a few easy days at Francis's company. Don't push him too hard." And the result? Now he's already out looking for women. For once, Derek didn't argue with Casper. He chimed in, looking furious. "I told you, between our three families, which company couldn't give him an internship? Why did he have to go to Francis? And you guys even stopped me. That bastard Francis even hid Elliot away. Fucking outrageous." Brant looked calm as he unhurriedly locked the door and drew the curtains. "It was my error in judgment. As an apology, you two can go first this time." Panicked. It was thrilling when I read it in a novel, but actually being a character in the book, I felt like I was going to lose my life right here. I tried to act weak and suck up to them, hoping to awaken their conscience. "Don't do this. Look at me, I'm just a normal guy. I'm not good enough for you guys." It didn't work at all. They just kept getting closer. Damn it. Casper wrapped his arms around my waist, looking like he had suffered a massive injustice. "How could you do this to me? Do you know how hard I tried? How much I had to mentally prepare myself to accept other people beside you besides me? How could you just leave with Francis so easily?" He kissed my earlobe and collarbone, his warm breath ghosting over my skin and sending shivers down my spine. Derek was stomping his feet anxiously on the side. "Casper, hurry up. If you can't, then move over. I want to kiss him too." I was pinned in the corner, surrounded on all sides, literally wanting to cry but having no tears left. Suddenly, there was a knock on the dorm door. Francis's assistant's emotionless voice filtered through. "Mr. Elliot, Mr. Francis asked me to tell you that it's time to go home. He's waiting for you to have dinner." Derek roared impatiently. "Piss off. Elliot isn't going." It was quiet outside for a moment. The next second, the lock clicked, and the door swung open. He truly lived up to the title of the omnipotent CEO's assistant in a novel. I don't know what method he used, but the three guys blocking me each took a phone call, and then, looking extremely unwilling, they actually let me be taken away. After all that effort, I still ended up back with Francis. Following a punishment I'd rather not remember, I was locked up in the villa again. Out of the four of them, Francis was the most terrifying. He always maintained a gentle facade while doing the most ruthless things. I was genuinely scared. As long as I didn't try to run away or think about going outside, Francis actually treated me very well. But if a person is locked up for too long, They lose their social skills and go crazy. Taking a step back, I could date him, but I couldn't accept becoming a pet with no freedom. But Francis wouldn't listen to any of that. What he wanted was absolute obedience. So, I planned my escape every single day. Finally, my chance came. Francis went abroad for business, and the villa next door suddenly caught on fire. In the chaos, Casper appeared. My eyes went wide. He quickly shoved me into a car and sped away, explaining, "How do you think that fire started?" "You said it." "Yeah. Burned my brother's house down." I only found out recently that Casper was the long-lost young master of a wealthy family, and he had just been recognized and brought back. But there was no such setting in the original book. With things like this, I didn't know if the plot had completely derailed. "Where are we going now?" "Eloping." Casper's eyes shone with a near-mad joy. "I'll take you somewhere no one can ever find us." This was insane. I originally thought I was the vicious side character, but now it seemed like, besides me, everyone else was a complete lunatic. I used the same methods I used to deal with Francis to coax Casper. He shuddered and gripped my hand tightly. "I knew it, you like me too." Along the way, he excitedly talked about how we'd live in our new place, whether we should get a pet, and how our home should ideally be near a scenic park. I agreed with everything he said, and then, while he was buying things at a highway rest stop, I secretly climbed into a transport truck. I paid the driver a hefty sum to take me away. A twisted, obsessive romance might be thrilling to read about, but my little heart couldn't take it. Running away was the best option. Chapter 9. Christmas Eve, 2 years later. I had just finished a warm New Year's Eve dinner with my coworkers from the convenience store. I was walking leisurely on my way home. Over the past 2 years in this small town, my life had been ordinary but full of simple joys. Before pushing open the door to my rental, I was still calculating how much more I needed to buy a small house of my own in town. Because my guard was completely down, I completely failed to notice the fleet of out-of-place luxury cars parked outside my rundown neighborhood. The moment I pushed the door open, I froze. The lights were on inside. In the small living room, four familiar figures were either standing or sitting. Francis stood quietly by the window. Hearing the door, he turned around, gracefully stubbed out his cigarette, and smiled. A smile that made my blood run cold. "Happy New Year, baby. You've played for 2 years. It's time to come home." Extra. The protagonist group's awakening perspectives. Casper's perspective. A month ago, Casper suddenly felt like the world could finally operate according to his own will. He had always seen Brant as a good friend and had no other thoughts about him. Yet a voice in his head kept insisting that Brant was his lover, along with 2 other men who were supposedly his suitors. Casper just found it absurd. What bullshit lovers. The thought of hugging and kissing Brant, being with 3 men, and even being the bottom. It was worse than eating shit. On the contrary, the tsundere in their dorm, Elliot, who loved to secretly scheme but never actually succeeded, actually caught his interest. Now, the voice in his head was gone, and he had full control over his own body and words. He felt the world was finally normal. Plus, he found a new source of entertainment. Teasing the Elliot who had suddenly stopped scheming. If he told him to run errands, he ran errands. If he told him to do something, he did it. Even if Casper purposefully initiated physical contact, Elliot would just timidly endure it. It was too interesting. And as he kept teasing him, Casper discovered something even more fascinating. When he kissed or hugged Elliot, the way he dodged and blushed was incredibly cute. When Casper faked sleepwalking to hold Elliot, he thought to himself, "Sure enough, if I'm really gonna like a man, it has to be someone I actually want for it to feel good." Brant's perspective. Brant had never questioned why, from childhood to adulthood, he seemed to only have eyes for Casper. He willingly treated him well, willingly followed behind him, acting as his loyal best friend. Until one day his mind suddenly went blank. It was as if a massive boulder had been lifted from his brain, and his entire body felt incredibly light. When he looked at Casper again, that involuntary compulsory urge in his body was gone. Instead, Elliot, the guy in their dorm who always loved to butt heads with Casper, suddenly started praising him every single day. That's right, every single day. Whenever he saw him, he would dish out all sorts of compliments. Praising how nice his shampoo smelled, praising his outfits, his hairstyle, how good he was to Casper, and praising his pecs and abs. A little spark of joy and pride slowly bloomed in Brant's heart. One day, when Elliot didn't praise him, Brant felt a wave of disappointment and displeasure. He wanted Elliot's eyes to stay on him forever. Only on him. So, the next time Elliot praised his abs, he asked, "Then do you want to touch them?" Derek's perspective. What's so great about looking at a guy's body? Derek grumbled inwardly when he bumped into a shirtless Elliot. The sports major's locker room was always bustling. When showering after training, There were never enough stalls, so it was common for a few guys to squeeze in together and scrub each other's backs. They were all men. Whatever Elliot had, Derek had too, and his physique was even more well-proportioned, his muscle lines even more defined. But when he actually saw Elliot, Derek felt his heart skip a beat, his throat tightening inexplicably. He quickly turned around, but couldn't stop the corner of his eye from stealing glances. He wanted to carve the smooth lines of Elliot's back into his brain. Derek realized something was wrong with him. Just a few days ago, he had been mocking Casper with his teammates for liking guys. But now, thinking about it, if the guy was Elliot, it seemed like it wouldn't be unacceptable. What a shame Elliot's leg injury healed so fast. Now, what excuse could he find to touch him again? Francis's perspective. Francis had always been cold-hearted and detached, scoffing at the idea of love. Outsiders saw him as gentle and refined, looking like a scholar in his gold-rimmed glasses. Only those close to him knew how ruthless his methods were and that he never showed mercy. But starting half a year ago, a voice in his head constantly urged him to go to the college town. He didn't know where the voice came from, but if he didn't go, he would get splitting headaches that no doctor could cure. Might as well go take a look, then. It just so happened the company had a collaborative project over there. After the meeting, the headache persisted. He leaned back in the backseat of his car, his eyes closed to rest, listening to his assistant outside the car scolding a new hire for losing a laptop, until Elliot walked past the car. The annoying voice in his head suddenly vanished, taking the agonizing headache along with it. Francis opened his eyes and looked at the young man outside the window. He was wearing a simple white t-shirt, his eyes shining as if holding the light, his expression clean and sincere. Francis felt as if something had gently brushed against his heart. This kid is actually pretty captivating. Suddenly, he felt that the voice in his head from before wasn't so annoying after all. He was 31 years old, long past the age of impulsivity. But in that moment, he suddenly felt that keeping a pure, innocent little pet seemed like a pretty good choice. If you enjoyed this story, remember to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.